Hello friends, very good morning and welcome to my channel Study and Grow. In today's video, we are going to discuss about a poem written by Sylvia Plath called Lady Lazarus. In this poem, we will discuss critical appreciation, confessional poem, and feminist autobiography. The poem Lady Lazarus is the most important of all the poems written by Sylvia Plath. Lady Lazarus is mythical story based on the biblical episode of Lazarus. The full story has been told by Saint John in chapter 17 of the book of John in the New Testament. The critics have interpreted the title of the poem in various ways. Some think that the word lady denotes a woman of high rank, while others believe that lady is used for a common woman. Lazarus was the brother of Mary. When he died, Mary and her brother appealed to Jesus to come to the place where Lazarus had been buried in a cave grave. Jesus came and stood before the grave and said, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus came out after being resurrected. Under Christ's order, his death clothes were removed. He became one of living person. This, the lady of the poem, is a mythological figure on the biblical Lazarus. Plath takes the myth of Lazarus as the basis of her poem, and she enacts her own death. At the end of the poem, Plath also refers to Phoenix. The poem Lady Lazarus is an autobiographical poem. The theme of the poem is death. She enumerates her suffering in her death voice by narrating the sad events of her life. In the year 1953, when she was at Smith College, she felt quite lonely. The black shadow of her father's miserable death caused her great despondency. This feeling of sorrow she has suppressed is the painful poem Daddy. Lady Lazarus, the standard interpretation of the poem suggests that it is about multiple suicide attempts. When the speaker says she has done it again, she means she has attempted suicide for the third time. After one accidental attempt and one deliberate attempt in the past, each attempt occurred in a different decade, and she is now 30 years old. The extremity of anger in this poem is not justifiable as something possible with a normal person in real life. We should understand that this is partly due to the neurosis that Plath was actually suffering from. Besides, it is essential to understand from the psychoanalytical point of view that the poem does not literally express reality alone. It is the relieving anger and frustration and an alternative outlet of the neurotic energy in the form of poetic expression. Furthermore, it is necessary to understand the anger as being directed against the general forces of inhumanity, violence, and destruction only symbolized by males in the poem. Sylvia Plath said that her personal experience is very important, but I believe poetry should be relevant to larger things such as Hiroshima and Tokyo and so on. This means that the frustration and anger against a dominating father or anyone for that matter becomes a starting point or central symbol for larger issues, including Hitler, torture, and inhumanity. The poem is therefore also about the victimization of modern war. The poem is less autobiographical than it is universal. In fact, the theme of universal female protest in the modern world is the most striking theme in the poem. The female speaker represents the creative force, and she is angry with the destructive forces symbolized by males. The illusion of the Second World War are all real. The anger against the German soldiers, Hitler, and his Nazi party is not too much. Though the speaker intended to die, just yielding to death will not annihilate her. She completes the poem with a final comeback. The poem is technically a bitter, dramatic monologue. The title ironically identifies a female Lazarus, where the original Lazarus was Malcolm Christ, brought back to life. The present speaker is identifying herself with a Lazarus different in sex, behavior, and everything. Plath persona is a figure who wants to subvert all that she can of the tradition that attempts to bring you back and torture rather than let you choose death and die. This female figure also represents the oppressed modern woman conscious of the fact that the male society will bring her back to life because it needs to satisfy itself by oppressing the woman. The poem destroys the myth. It borrows it to reject and state an antithesis. The poem is about a woman who is to turn the tables on the father and his kind. Its dramatic overstatement of male evil may sound intolerable to some readers, but it must be taken to poetically express the resentment in the female mind that was suppressed for ages against all kinds of injustice upon them by male society and tradition rather than by individual makes upon individual female. The anger will be justified if one thinks of the extremity of long born suffering of women through the ages. The myth of Lazarus is transformed in the poem into the myth of the reincarnating phoenix, the bird which emulates itself every 500 years but rises whole and rejuvenated from its ashes. Sylvia Plath provided a self of explication during a radio reading. The speaker is a woman who has the great and terrible gift of being reborn. The only trouble is she has to die first. She is Phoenix, the liberation spirit, what you will. The poem is written in 28 stanza that the suggestive of the 28 days of the normal female menstrual cycle, or in a sense, their rebirth. The reproductive cycle echoes the creativity of the female poet, but here the creativity is also destructive of that entire stand against the female pursuit, including her freedom to die. The poem is said to evolve from the many kinds of losses and tragedies that Plath experienced and wanted to turn into positive advantages. This poem can be called an attempt to interpret her suicidal attempt as a process to transform herself, whether she succeed or failed. Lady Lazarus defines the central aesthetic principles of Plath's late poetry. First, the poem derives its dominant effects from the colloquial language, from the conversational opening, I have done it again, to the clipped warning of the ending, be aware, be aware. Lady Lazarus appears as the monologue of a woman speaking spontaneously out of her pain and psyche integration. As she speaks, Lady Lazarus seems to gather up her energies for an assault on her enemies, and the staccato repetition of phrases built up to the intensity of feelings. This is a language poured out of some burning inner fire, though it retains the rhythmic precision that we expect from a much less intensely felt expression. It is also a language made of almost entirely of adopt a highlighted conversational stance and a colloquial idiom to the dramatic monologue form. I hope you like this video. Keep on watching. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.